A second front bleeds quietly. As in southern Lebanon, soldiers fall, casualties climb, and over 1 million flee as fighting intensifies. Forward defense meets mounting cost. As Hezbollah and Israeli forces trade fire, one question sharpens: how long can this front hold before it reshapes the entire war? The Israeli military says dozens of its soldiers have been wounded in intensified fighting along the Lebanon front, as operations against Hezbollah escalate. According to Israeli military data, 36 Israeli soldiers were injured in Lebanon over the past 48 hours. The total number of Israeli troops wounded since the start of the war has now reached 411, including 27 seriously injured and 60 moderately wounded. The Israeli Defense Forces say they are continuing offensive and defensive operations across southern Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah positions and infrastructure. In a statement on April 7th, the IDF said troops from the 91st Division identified and killed members of a Hezbollah anti-tank unit operating from a mosque in southern Lebanon, while also uncovering what it described as dozens of weapons. Israeli forces said they dismantled the compound to eliminate what they called ongoing threats to both soldiers and civilians. In a separate operation, the IDF said it identified a Hezbollah operative monitoring Israeli troop movements. The individual was killed in a coordinated airstrike involving the Israeli Air Force and ground units. The military added that additional Hezbollah cells were neutralized, with troops seizing weapons including explosives, firearms, and ammunition. Meanwhile, Israel's 98th Division has completed deployment along a defensive line aimed at countering anti-tank missile threats, reinforcing what the military described as a forward defensive posture in southern Lebanon. Multiple divisions, including the 91st, 36th, and 146th, remain active in the area as operations continue. The escalation has also triggered a growing humanitarian crisis. According to the UN High Commissioner for Refugees on April 7th, more than 1 million people have now been displaced inside Lebanon due to the conflict.
The numbers for Lebanon that we have been updating you has, as we said, has crossed the 1 million mark. So these are IDPs who are displaced inside Lebanon. Plus, with that, we also have had nearly 200,000 Syrians that have left Lebanon and arrived into Syria, and with those also nearly 32,000 Lebanese that have arrived also in Syria.
The United Nations says the displacement includes both Lebanese citizens and Syrian refugees fleeing renewed violence, underscoring the regional spillover of the conflict. As Israeli ground operations deepen and Hezbollah resistance continues, the Lebanon front is emerging as a critical secondary battlefield, where rising military casualties and mass displacement are reshaping the contours of an already widening regional war. Just past midnight on April 5th, Hezbollah did something it had not done at any point since this war began. It fired a naval cruise missile for the very first time at an Israeli warship. The group said its fighters had spent hours tracking the vessel before striking. According to Hezbollah's statement, the warship was approximately 68 nautical miles off the Lebanese coast that is roughly 126 kilometers out to sea and was, in the group's own words, preparing to launch attacks on Lebanese territory. Hezbollah confirmed a direct hit. When AFP reached the Israeli military for comment, the response was brief and telling.
We are not aware of it.
But the strike itself is harder to dismiss. Israeli warships have been used repeatedly in recent months to launch strikes deep into Lebanon. Hezbollah, it appears, has now decided to push back at sea. In its statement, the group drew a direct line to the 2006 war, referencing former Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah's announcement that Hezbollah had struck an Israeli Sa'ar-class warship during that conflict. The reference was deliberate. It was a message about institutional memory, that Hezbollah tracks its own history and intends to repeat it. While the naval strike was the headline, what followed in Israeli media may have been even more significant. Channel 12 in Israel reported that Major General Ravil Milo, the Northern Command chief, told a closed-door meeting that the military had been surprised by Hezbollah's ability to rebuild its fighting capacity after earlier confrontations. The report went further, saying that previous Israeli military assessments, which had concluded that Hezbollah had been significantly degraded, were now being described internally as overly optimistic. That admission, made behind closed doors, landed publicly anyway. On Saturday alone, the day before the warship strike, Hezbollah said it carried out 42 separate operations against Israeli positions and troop concentrations. Early Sunday brought more: rocket strikes on Israeli forces in Ainata and near the settlement of Malakia, and drone attacks on the Zarit barracks shortly after midnight. All of this falls under what Hezbollah has named its ongoing campaign, Devoured Straw, targeting Israeli military sites, border positions, and troop gatherings across the north. The broader picture is this: a group that Israel believed it had weakened significantly is now striking Israeli warships at sea, running dozens of operations a day, and, by the account of Israel's own northern commander, doing so with a level of capacity that caught the military off guard. For years, the world watched FPV drones tear through armored columns on the frozen fields of eastern Ukraine. Small, cheap, and devastatingly accurate, these first-person view drones became the defining weapon of the Russian war. Now, the same technology has shown up on the hills of South Lebanon, and Israel is feeling the blow. In recent days, IDF fighters operating inside Lebanon began reporting something new. Small explosive drones carrying explosive charges weighing a few kilograms started appearing near them and then exploding. One incident, roughly a week ago, saw one of these drones reach a settlement right next to the Israeli fence. It hit close to 2 military vehicles. The vehicles were damaged. Soldiers were lucky to walk away. But recent footage reveals direct hits on Israeli positions, with the IDF reporting injuries among troops. What makes these drones difficult to deal with is what powers them: fiber optics. That means traditional jamming, the kind militaries rely on to knock drones out of the sky, simply does not work here. The signal runs through a wire, not the air. There is nothing to intercept. This clearly shows that Hezbollah might be using or cloning Russian technology for their own benefit. In order to change the situation, a number of moves are being considered, which are aimed at protecting the maneuvering forces and assisting them in their mission. Among these are advancing the Iron Dome system northward and deploying autonomous armored personnel carriers. The IDF has confirmed injuries among troops from similar strikes. Fighters describe the encounters as reminiscent of what soldiers in Ukraine have been living through for years. That comparison is not casual. But even as the drone threats emerge, Israel is not pulling back. The IDF is reinforcing its control in southern Lebanon, and senior officials are blatantly saying that old boundary isn't enough.
The Litani line is no longer relevant. In order to provide real security to the residents of the north, a new border line needs to be established in the Awali.
The Litani River has long been the benchmark, the line that defined the buffer zone between Israel and Hezbollah. Moving that marker all the way to the Awali River means pushing Hezbollah significantly further north than it has ever been pushed before.
This is the only way we can provide real security to the residents of the north.
The IDF was forced to take the decision as the residents of the north have experienced incessant shelling from Lebanon. During the holiday alone, Hezbollah launched 150 rockets at Israeli communities, disrupting the holiday routine and forcing many to spend a lot of time in shelters. In response, the IDF is moving fast. The Iron Dome missile defense system is being repositioned closer to maneuvering forces in Lebanon because most of Hezbollah's fire is now directed at troops in the field, not just cities back home. The Air Force commander visited Northern Command this week to personally assess how better to support ground operations. And there is something else being considered: autonomous armored personnel carriers loaded with explosives, driven into the center of villages before foot soldiers enter. It is the same method used in Gaza. The goal is to reduce the risk to troops before they go in on foot. What is unfolding here is not just a military operation expanding in scope. It is a conflict where technology is evolving faster than the rules of engagement. Cheap drones threaten tanks. Autonomous vehicles replace point men. And a border that's being held of decades is being redrawn not on the negotiating table but on the ground, village by village.